Welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
How does it feel to be on this side of the dais here instead of being
it's
back?
a relief.
Yeah.
This is good. This works for me.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe I'll chair meetings from here too.
I think it's a good idea. We'll just break down that whole barrier of
There
sides and what have
you go.
you, and
That
we'll
works.
just all be a part of the same team. What a concept, huh?
Truly.
Let's kind of start from the beginning. I mean, you really got into this early on.
I did.
Yeah.
I got my SAG card when I was 2.
Late bloomer, were you?
Yeah, I was just a complete waste and a terrible burden on my parents up till that point. It was 1966, and I started. My first job was in a Carter's baby clothes commercial. Which I actually have on tape that the Carter's company gave me, I don't know, 20 years later or something. All I did was run around on a boat in a little jumper, and that was it. And that was sort of the...
You said, this is a good gig, I'm going to keep
Wow,
doing
I
this.
really enjoyed this. My whole family was in the business.
Right.
So it sort of seemed like a natural thing to them. We had a family friend who, watching one of my many performances in the living room at 2, said to my mom, she should probably do commercials. And my mom, thinking, yeah, right, took me on an audition, and that was it. And I think I did something ridiculous, like 40 commercials in just a few years.
Yeah.
And then started with episodic television. The first episodic television I ever did was an episode of Gunsmoke when I was, I believe, 7 or 8. That's
that's one of those iconic shows. I go, wow, Gunsmoke.
Yeah, an iconic Western. Go figure that out. And it just sort of snowballed from there. And,
do you remember, wanting to do this really from the early age? I mean, you talk about doing performances in your living room. Was it something that was conscious, or was it just kind of a part of you and kind of felt it?
My earliest memories, and I would imagine, these are before my brother was born, and I was 3 when he was born, so this is going way back. I remember being on the road with my father, who was a stand-up comic, and we had really crazy hours, but I was always in the club with him whenever he performed. My mom would take me, and I remember standing in the back of the club and standing on a chair and doing his act while he did his act. So that was sort of the beginning of it. And I put on shows, I put on ballets, I put on all kinds of theatricals. I did Shirley Temple songs, and I did imitations of the Little Rascals, and my poor brother, I made him do ballets with me. He
still remembers that, doesn't he?
He's still exacting his revenge for that stuff. It's genetic with me, and what a lot of people don't know is I'm also adopted, and I found my biological family years later when I was 26, after my first child was born, and discovered that they're performers too. So it is genetic, and it is also nurtured by the family that raised me. So it was sort of somewhat inevitable.
Was your family, obviously they were supportive of this. Would you think they would have been supportive if you said, I don't really want to do any of this performing thing, even though all of them were?
If it were not fun and it were really stressful, I think my parents would have put their foot down and said there's no way. But it was almost like breathing for me. It was just something that I had to do to, excuse me, it's warm in here, to live.
Right.
I don't think anybody had a choice in the matter.
Right. You still feel that way?
I do. I love to work. It's my favorite thing to do, aside from being home with my kids, which that kind of goes without saying. But the process of creating a character and finding the various nuances of that character and developing history for the character, and then working with the other actors to develop the story and the relationships and thinking of things that, just the whole process just is so exciting to me. It never gets old. It didn't get old in the 10 years I did Little House on the Prairie. I was playing the same person. It was still something new and exciting, and something to continually be discovered. And I feel the same way, and I think I'll always feel that way. being able to act and to have been blessed enough to earn a living as an actor is one of the greatest joys of my life. I'm a lucky woman.
Let's talk a little bit about Little House. How did it come to be? I mean, how did you wind up auditioning for it? How old were you, first of all, when that...
I was 9 when we shot the pilot, 19 when it ended. There was a cattle call for the girls to play Laura and Mary and Carrie on Little House on the Prairie. I think there were, I don't know, nationally, easily 1,000 girls. And I went in, I begged. My mother didn't want me to do anything that would be a series because she didn't want me out of school that long. And I begged and pleaded and cajoled and carried on and pouted and manipulated my way and acted to the audition. And I went through the process. I also, I have to say, I knew Little House on the Prairie because I had read the books. No clue who Michael Landon was. I didn't know. I didn't know from Bonanza. Who knew? I was a Brady Bunch girl. I didn't know. What do I know from guys on horses?
Robert Reed, maybe, but not.
But not Michael Landon. I didn't really. I think maybe he was the Kodak guy or something at that point. And so I went into this thing just focused on getting this job, and was pretty determined about the whole thing. And went through the basic audition process from 1,000 to a few hundred to 20 to 10 to 5 to I think 3 of us screen tested for the role, and I got it. I came to find out later on that when it came time to send the screen tests to the network for their approval, Michael Landon only sent mine because he knew that was pretty much it. And he tested with us. And we had to do a scene with him, one of our now sort of iconic weepy father-daughter moments. And we did that a lot. A lot of weeping.
And really well, I might add, okay?
Well, that was interesting because it started in that audition process. He and I had some sort of a thing where we could look at each other and make each other burst into tears. It was just this instant, I don't know if it was a past life thing or what it was, but we had this symbiotic love for each other that was immediate. And I remember actually when I was a kid, if I was having a hard time getting into a scene like that or having a hard time coming up with the emotions, and it was a scene with Mike, he would tell everybody to be really quiet. He'd put his arm around me and he'd walk me off. And he'd take me off into a corner. By the time we get to the corner that we were going to have our little chat in, he would kneel down in front of me and he would be crying. And he'd say to me every time, with tears streaming down his face, "None of this matters. I just want you to know how much I love you." And I would start to cry and he'd say, "You ready?"
Oh.
And I'd say, "Absolutely, let's go." And we'd go and we'd do it. And then he would hold me after until it was done, until I felt better, and then off to school.
How lucky you were to have a mentor like that.
That was a
protector,
wonderful.
You know?
Yeah, it was. It was interesting how he was. I felt safe enough to do that with him. I felt comfortable, and I felt like he would never use it against me. So we were able to give that to each other. And then when I would start, he would get even more weepy. Sometimes we got a little carried away. There was actually one scene where I couldn't say dialogue.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah, he had to lean over and make a booger joke or something.
Going back to the audition process, as a 9-year-old, do you have recollections of being full of anxiety about this, or was it just sort of a game to you? Did you go into it with such determination that you were sure you had it before you started? I mean, what was that like, and what do you remember about it?
I don't know if this is the way the process still works with children, but back then when we went in, they would have a big group of us that would go in, and then we'd go into the waiting area, and then we'd go into the room and audition, and they'd kind of whittle it down until there were 2 or 3 girls left, and it was always me and Christy McNichol. That were like, you know, the Emmy Award-winning one.
Even at that age, there's that thing.
I knew. I knew. But it was really interesting. I think my mother did me a tremendous service, because we would go to these auditions and there'd be these girls there in their party dresses with their party shoes, and their mothers would be curling their hair and they'd be running their lines. And I went to a school where we wore a uniform, and my mother would change me out of my uniform in the back of the car, and I had my standard audition outfit, which was a t-shirt, overalls, and flip-flops. Put my hair in pigtails. Whatever dirt was on my face stayed on my face. I'd walk in and I'd do my homework until they called me in. I wouldn't even look at the scene I was supposed to prepare, and I generally just read cold. And it, honestly, as a kid, I mean, as an adult, I would feel cocky feeling this way. But as a kid, it never occurred to me that I wasn't going to get it.
Isn't that great?
I just went in assuming, okay, you know, it's perfect. And I was really determined to do it. My mom still, she's sure that people think she told me to do this, but when it was a commercial, whatever the product was my favorite thing. I would go, mustard is the best mustard I eat it all the time. I hated mustard. I lied about knowing how to ride a bike and got a job where I had to ride a bike.
Did you learn a lesson out of that one?
I learned how to ride a bike.
Oh, good.
They changed the storyline of the commercial from a father and a daughter riding bikes in a park to a father teaching a daughter how to ride a bike. And I learned how to ride a bike that day.
There you go.
So I learned early on that lying is good. And you can make a really lot of money if you lie really well.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that part of it. It was kind of a contest for me to see how many of these I could get.
How did your friends at school react to your being on television? Was that weird? Was that?
That was a whole other situation. There was a combination of things that happened at school, particularly after Little House. With the commercials and stuff, I would be gone for a couple days and then I'd come back. And I never talked about it. I was just a kid in the class when I came back, so it really wasn't a big deal. But when Little House happened and it became this incredibly popular show, it changed everything. I was in school less. And when I was there, I started to feel different, and they started to see me differently, and it set me up for a really difficult situation socially with people my own age. And the more I worked, the more comfortable I felt with adults. Even though there were other kids on the set, I was the only one who was there all the time. And I had my own tutor in my own schoolroom, and the other kids would come in and out, but they also had another tutor, and they would actually work with her. So it was just me pretty much all the time, and the grown-ups. So when I went back to school, I felt awkward with the kids. And then as I got older, it got worse, and forget dating. That was just, in high school, was out of the question. They never asked me out because they figured, why would I go out with them when I can date, I don't know, Scott Baio.
You and Scott, really? I didn't know that.
Well,
that was
Actually, he was a friend of mine growing up, and I made the fatal mistake of taking him to a homecoming dance because nobody asked me.
Lord.
That further alienated me from everyone. So they were intimidated to ask me out, and I felt like I wasn't a part of their world, and then it became really odd because there I was in this world of school where people didn't know what they wanted to study in college, and I already had a career of 10 years or so. So my social skills with people my own age were really bad for a really long time. In fact, I think I still get along better with people who are a little older than I am. It's a strange life growing up as a well-known child actor. It adds layers of different types of traumas. There are great advantages to it, and there are fantastic opportunities that come out of it, but there are really difficult and painful experiences as well that can tend to, if they can tend to make one feel really freakish, I think.
Yeah. I can see where not fitting in, especially during those formative years, it's got to take its toll. And unless you have a really good supportive family, I would think that explains a lot of why certain people crash and burn.
It's tough. It's really tough. And to add insult to injury, you add on the normal traumas and experiences of life, and then the fishbowl aspect of that. When I was 11, my father died. And so that added to my own personal pain in dealing with all of the people around me who had dads, and I didn't have a dad, and then I was also, this weird working child, and none of the other people were. And to top it all off, they didn't have braces in the 1800s, so I couldn't have braces when we were shooting. So when we went on hiatus, I had super braces. I had braces, a neck gear, rubber bands, a thing, and that's how I had to go to school.
Freak,
metalhead with things. Hello. My ears stuck out, my teeth stuck out, and I was knock-kneed, and it wasn't fun. So I was a straight A student. Oh, they hated me. They just hated me.
Wow.
So it was.
How'd you work your way out of that? I mean, something must have changed at some point where you decide, what, the heck with them. I'm who I am. And
actually, last year.
Just last year. Okay. Well, good.
To tell you the God's honest truth, last year was my 20-year high school reunion, and I went. And I sat with all of these people I had gone to school with all of these years, and I was sitting with one of the really popular guys from my class, who actually is an attorney now. And we were sitting and we were talking, and he said to me, he said, secretly I always had a crush on you in school. And I almost started to cry, and I said to him, why didn't you didn't even talk to me, you didn't look at me. He said, no, I was embarrassed. I couldn't, you would never have gone out with me. I would have died to have gone to a movie with him. And what it was it was just that the youth, it was just that intimidation and the awkwardness that all of us felt. And it wasn't because I was weird or different. It was just the way it was. So I reconciled that a year ago.
Last year, that's good. Did you ever think about asking the guys out when you were in high school? You asking them out, or that just never even occurred to you?
God, no, I couldn't talk to these people. No.
That intense?
No, what if they said no?
All right. Then you'd know, huh?
Yeah.
Then
I'd really be afraid.
Who wants to know?
No. That's just to let that one go.
Yeah.
Which is amazing, because it was not unique to me. I mean, I think we've all had that experience at some point in school where there was someone we wanted to talk to or date or whatever, and just couldn't because we were afraid that they'd say no or ignore us or do something rude.
How did some of these experiences inform your work later on in life? I mean, do you see now connections of some of the things that you've had to go through and how you can now draw upon some of these experiences to create a character?
I think that I've tried to live my life, particularly over the last, I would say, decade. I've really focused on this journey of self-discovery through, honestly, therapy, and really examining the events in my life that led me up to wherever I am right now, which is actually a good place. I'm pretty happy with my life and my existence. And I think as an actor, the deeper one goes into one's own behavior, the deeper I've gone into why I do the things that I do and why I'm the way I am, it helps me to inform whatever character I'm playing, no matter what it is. There are a lot of really traumatic experiences I've had in my life, losing my father, losing Michael Landon, illnesses and really difficult things that I've had, divorce, a very chronically sick child that I've had to walk through. But fortunately, because I'm an actor, I can release those experiences and draw on those experiences, and I know enough now to access them and use them in my work. I don't run from them and hide from them.
Right.
It's part of who I am, it's part of my experience, and I get to share that with other people, which is a unique opportunity I think that all actors have, is to tap in and draw from our lives' experiences to enrich and inform the people we're playing.
Could you talk a little bit about what, I mean, there must be a whole lot of things that you learned from Michael Landon, but what kinds of things stay with you that, you find yourself even now going, man, I learned that from Michael way back when, and here it is again. What did he teach you about the craft? What did he teach you about the business?
Work ethic.
Mm-hmm. And what does that mean?
To me, that means showing up, knowing your lines, hitting your marks, being prepared, not wasting time, money, same thing, unnecessarily. Striving for the best, I think. Mike, I was just saying this today to his daughter, who I spent my morning with. Michael was one of those people that everybody wanted to do well for and with, because his approval was so consuming. He was so generous with his approval. He was also very generous with his disapproval.
I was just going to say, I'd heard he's very demanding.
It was either his opinion was that either you are a professional about this and you do your job and I am there for you and I will do whatever it is. I don't care if you're a child, an adult, it doesn't matter. But if you don't do it the right way, and if you waste my time, waste my money, and waste the effort I put into this, you're gone. And I saw people get fired. And it would never even occur to me that that could be me. That would have been really bad. I just, it never hung over my head. I never operated from that place of fear with him. It was just his expectation, and it's my expectation when I work now. The other thing I learned from him is loyalty. People could not buy their way onto a crew to work with Michael Landon. Literally, they would have to inherit the position from a parent who had passed away. It was virtually impossible to get a job working with this man because so many people wanted to do it, and most of the crew had been together since Bonanza. And he inspired that loyalty by being generous with his humor, generous with his spirit, generous with the budget. Whenever we went on location, every crew member had a second ticket for their spouse or whatever relative or friend or person they wanted to bring with them. He also was never, what is the male word for diva? Devo?
Devo. Yeah, whip it good.
Yes, exactly. Michael had one single room on a honey wagon. We all did. Everybody had the same dressing room facilities. There was no trailer. There was no fifth wheel. There was no assistants running around. There was no special makeup trailer for Mike, special hairstylist for Mike. We all had the same thing. In fact, we all wore the same makeup base that he did, and he was really tan. I looked orange every day when I came home. I used to refer to myself as the pumpkin because I had this orange, natural tan was the color of the base that we used. But it was just the way he worked. I remember there were only 2 people who ever did guest star roles on Little House on the Prairie that had actual big trailers. And Mariette Hartley, because at the time she was nursing a child, and Patricia Neal. Those were the only people. Ray Bolger didn't have his own trailer. Lou Ayres didn't have his own trailer. Nobody had their own trailer. And it really sort of set the standard for everybody. You know, nobody was allowed to behave that way. It just didn't happen on his set. So it created this work environment where everybody was on an even footing. And if anybody could have done it, it was Michael. I mean, my gosh, the man was, you know, one of the biggest earners of money in the history of NBC. He'd been on the air for generations at that point. He owned it, he produced it, he directed it, he wrote it, he starred in it. He could have done it, and he never did. He was not a Devo.
You've gone on to direct a couple of things here. Do you try to create a similar environment on the sets?
Yeah, I did, and I do, and hopefully will in the future. Would someone be willing to have me direct again? Which I really enjoyed. I enjoy the process of working with actors, finding their way through projects as much as I enjoy it doing it for myself when I'm acting. I think it's really a beautiful sort of choreography to watch people find their way through it and watch actors find their way through a scene, and then to have the added dimension of figuring out where the camera's going to be and thinking and editing in my brain at the same time was something that I hadn't really done. And that actually, when I directed my first television, my only actually real directing of television, was when I really realized how much I learned from Mike. Mm-hmm. I hired a lot of the same crew that I worked with on Little House. Mm-hmm. And I hired people who understood my shorthand, which was his shorthand, mm-hmm. where I'd watch the actors rehearse a scene and I'd work with them and we'd work through it and we'd find our marks, and then I'd send them out and then I'd have the crew come in and I'd say, okay, we're gonna do one of these and one of those and one of those and one of those. And everybody understood mm-hmm. what that meant, and it went like that, and every day we finished early and we came in under budget on a $300,000 budget. Woo. Yeah. Of course, I shot it in my own house, so I didn't have to pay myself rent.
But you got
raise
the
no
movie
dummy.
done. Yeah,
Got it done. And it was a tremendous experience. It was a really great growing and learning experience for me. I remember the first day of the first rehearsal. I had the actors all on the set, and I had the crew ready, and we were watching the first rehearsal of something, and they were getting ready to do it, and I said, okay, everybody quiet, and action please. And the actors all stopped and went, please? Yeah, please.
This word please, what did it mean?
What
does this mean? What does this mean? This please thing. Yeah.
We don't say that. The crew t-shirts actually that they printed up at the end on the back said action please. It's very sweet.
That's great. What happened after Little House on the Prairie? Let's see, you started that when you were 9 and it went, what, 9 or 10 seasons?
Well, 9 seasons, 10 years.
So you come out at 19 years old, and what's life like then?
Well, first I had to overcome the severe depression of the end of that part of my life, mm-hmm. which I kind of had been yearning for in a way. I was 19, I was dating, I was starting to have my own life.
You had a date? Wait a second, let's go, no, sorry.
Not with someone from high school.
Okay.
I had to date another actor, but that's a whole other subject matter. I had this whole social group. I actually did have friends who were my own age, but they were different. They were Tom Cruise and Rob Lowe and Emilio Estevez, the whole Brad Pitt thing.
Oh, that group. Okay, yeah. No more Scott Baio, though, huh? Sorry.
I like to tell people that it was like college, but we had limos.
Yeah, there you go.
That was my year abroad. But I had this other life, and I was starting to separate from the image of having been a child, and I was really fighting to be perceived as a young woman, you know, in every article written about me from the time I turned 18 until last year. It was half pint grows up. Look at her now. She's an adult. I have 4 children, and they're still saying, look how she's grown. My God. Getting close to 40, and they're still talking about it. Now I like it. I would like people to think that I'm young like that. At that time, though, I really fought it. I wanted to be, I didn't want to be half pint. Right. I wanted to be Melissa, the woman.
Right. Sophisticated, worldly.
Yeah. I mean, I'd been to Europe, you know. I did ride in a limo with Tom Cruise to a premiere once. And this was big stuff for me. Separating from that, separating from at the same time my family, my life, and finding my own way as a young adult. Mm-hmm. And I felt that not having to go work with these same people and put on the petticoats and put on the skirt and lace up the boots when, you know, all I wanted to do was just wear high heels and have fun. I figured that's what I needed to be an adult. Mm-hmm. And I really was dissatisfied at work. I really was feeling stymied and stifled and kind of like I wanted to stretch and grow and move on in my life. It had nothing to do with the work. The work part of it was good and stimulating, as I said before. And I really thought that's what I wanted until someone called and said, it's over. Right. And I stopped and I said, no, you can't tell me this is over. This is not over. And the way we found out about it was brutal. Victor French, who played Mr. Edwards, called me and he said, hey, do you want to do, I think it was Merv Griffin or Mike Douglas or one of those talk shows, that's how long ago it was, with me. And I said, sure, what do we do, why? And he said, I'm protesting the cancellation. I said, what cancellation of?
What?
He said, our show. So, what do you mean? He said, I think you need to call Mike. And I called Michael and I said, I just heard that the show was canceled. And he said, you know what, I don't know. All I know is we're not on the schedule for this fall, but no one has called me. And as far as I know, no one from the network ever did officially call him.
Oh, man. Wow.
Yeah, it was fairly brutal. And we were all really angry. And I remember my manager at the time, because Michael was just, his wrath was frightening, and he was wrathful and vengeful and extraordinarily vicious. And I remember my manager calling in saying to him, calm down, stop, breathe. Just breathe. Let's make a deal for some movies. Right. Little house movies over the next few years. Don't do anything, don't say anything, we'll work on this, you know, we'll let me be the buffer here for you. And we did, and that's when we did the final 3 movies. But Michael was really adamant in saying, you know, nobody shoots on my sets. Nobody will ever shoot on my sets but me. And that's actually ultimately why the final episode, we blew everything up.
I love that.
On camera.
Yeah.
The episode.
Sometimes it's not enough to get out. You got to get even, don't you?
Oh yeah. We made it very clear that there would be no more Little House and no one was going to use our stuff. Right. That was ours. Huh. That was where we all grew up, and that was
cathartic, I'll bet.
They came in the day before the final day of shooting, and they shot the actual blowing up of the buildings. And we had, our trailers were parked around on a hill, around the corner from where the town was. And what we would do is we'd come in and we'd get ready, and one by one we'd trickle down to the set. It was the way we generally did it. And that last day, none of us had seen the rubble that was left behind. And without even coordinating it or speaking about it, one by one we went into makeup and we waited, all of us, for each one of us to be finished. Because without even saying it, we knew this was something we didn't want to face individually. We had to do it together. And we all sort of huddled and walked down the path, and we rounded the corner. And when we rounded the corner, it was gone. Right. There was just piles of wood there. And the whole day, although very healing and very cathartic to go through that grieving process, was really sad. Yeah. And there was a lot of crying, and there was, you know, all of the tears that are on film there was no acting. That was just us saying goodbye to each other. And there happened to be cameras there. And the day ended, and one by one, everybody left and went home and walked back to the trailers and got ready and drove away. And I was left standing in the middle of the town with Mike. Oh, the story. And I was crying, and he was crying. And he grabbed me in this huge hug, and he said, I don't want you to think that this is the end, because for you, this is the beginning. And he walked me to my trailer, and that was the last day. And it was monumental. And then my career just did something completely different. I ended up doing my first and only major feature film shortly thereafter. without my security blanket, without all of these people I'd ever worked with, on location, alone, no mother, no guardians, for the first time in my life. And he was right. I mean, it was the beginning of something entirely different. And then this movie, The Week thing, happened after that, and here I am.
Stock and trade, then.
Stock and trade.
Right, yeah.
Bread and butter.
Yes, indeed.
Peas and carrots.
Was there any kind of slump after Little House ended, or were you fortunate and it pretty well played steady?
I've been very lucky in that, generally speaking, with the exception of the last year, it's been, well, not if you count the episode of Providence that I just did, but I haven't done a movie of the week since a year ago last November. I haven't shot a movie of the week, which for me is really unusual. I've only not worked for a year both times I was pregnant with my children. That was it. And that was pretty much voluntary. And who wanted to work with me anyway? When I get pregnant, my whole body gets pregnant, my head, my face, my neck, everything. My ankles were pregnant.
Quite an image there. I'm thinking this whole body
interesting?
pregnancy thing. I don't know. I'm not sure.
It's a little bit scary. It's just a good thing I was never on camera for all of that. And I had a tendency to cut my hair off, which was, I'm getting into an area that you don't need to know about.
Now, yeah.
Anyway, with the exception of that, and now this has been the longest sort of slow spell.
Yeah. Well, anything still making, I mean, let's talk about a little bit about the audition process. I mean, you still have to audition for roles. You know, is it as painful as it ever was? Do you still get nervous over it? What do you do to quell the nerves and to deal, with the work?
I hate it.
Yeah.
I
They
have
gotta come
friends.
up with a better way, shouldn't they?
I have friends who really enjoy it, though. I have not many, a couple of friends who think it's just this great challenge, and they're going to go in and they're going to do this. I don't know when it started that I got afraid of auditioning, because as a kid, as I said, it was just second nature to me. But I can't sleep. I get nauseous. I get sweaty. My hands shake. My palms sweat. I don't know why. Maybe because it's really infrequent for me. I audition for television series and feature films. Movies of the week I haven't in a really long time. They call you up and offer the role. Those just happen, or I develop them, and they're from sort of the get-go. This last pilot season, I auditioned for 4 pilots. Clearly didn't get one.
No, they can still call.
Maybe.
I always hold out. Yeah, they can still call.
None of these shows are on the fall schedule, but they could still call.
Yeah.
Aren't we just unbelievable sometimes, actors, the way we think? No, they're definitely not calling.
I'm glad we could work through that here tonight.
Thank you very much.
Good. That's a good thing.
Thank you. You may have saved me some money in therapist dollars. I don't think I'm good at it. I really don't. I think that the pressure is so intense, and I feel like I'm out of my body, like I'm not connected, and no matter how much I work on it, and I have a photographic memory, I'm sure I'm not going to remember my lines, and then there's that feeling. If I'm sure you guys get this too. I hope I'm not the only one. If I mess up, my whole body gets hot and my fingertips start to tingle, and I don't know whether to stop and admit that I messed up, or keep going, or when it's over, say, listen, I sucked. Because you don't want them to. You don't want to plant that idea in their head. God forbid they did think you were good, and you tell them you suck. They go, well, maybe she did.
That's right.
I don't want to give them an excuse not to hire me. So there's this. I mean, the inner monologue in my head when I'm auditioning is just. It's horrible. On the flip side of all of that, I am a lot of times on the other side of auditions. And I am so empathetic you want to audition for me, trust me. You want me in that room because I mean, there's a half an hour, I will work with the people that are there. If I'm not directing, when I was directing, it was just, forget it. It took me forever to cast this thing because I worked with everybody so much. But when I work with people from an actor's perspective, when they ask for my input on the people playing my husband or children or whatever it is, I read with them. Reading with casting directors is so hard sometimes because they're just, I mean, there's nothing worse than to be playing a romantic scene with a woman who's been...
I love you. I've never...
Yeah.
You've never been out of my mind
You're the most beautiful woman I ever saw. Oh, sorry. It's just, it doesn't, Oh, thank God. The fingertips started and get cut. So I'm actually very, very conscious of being generous in the audition process when I am there with other actors. And I don't see any reason not to be. I mean, it's certainly if the director's in the room, it's their responsibility to make sure. And you want the actor to give you the best performance possible because you want the best actors you can hire to be in these things. I never understood that mentality. I would love it if they would hang a curtain and have little peek holes where you can't see them, but they can see you, and it's okay, Or just do it on a stage. That I can handle. Then I know you're an audience, and I know I have to perform for you. But this auditioning thing where you're sitting, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I do it.
But
I don't like it.
You mentioned stage a second ago. You've done some stage as well. Talk about the difference for you in the experience of working on stage as opposed to in front of a camera.
It's so different. It's so different to have, first of all, the audience feedback, because it's like having another character there. Mm-hmm. So to get that sensation of, for some reason, I'm more comfortable with not doing very well with an audience because I can sort of feel that, this is not going very well. Maybe I need to change that, change this. And then and the challenge of drawing them in and getting them to be on my side is fun, as opposed to the singular casting director and producer, network people. The other thing that I love about being on stage is the continuity of being able to go from A to B.
Right.
And all the things that go in between, as opposed to having to jump back and forth and stop and start and this and that and the other, and people running in and touching up your hair and touching up your face. Right. That part of it is hard. It requires focus. It's not hard. It's challenging. Mm-hmm. That part of filmmaking for me. I didn't do a play. I hadn't been on stage at all until we did The Miracle Worker. Before we shot the movie, we did it as a play with Patty Duke as Annie Sullivan, and the same cast that was in the film was in the play. It was, the idea was that we became extraordinarily comfortable in our roles, so that when we shot the film, we were really ready, and. That was an amazing experience to be playing someone who is blind and deaf on stage, where I had to be aware of the audience and the objects on the stage and the choreography of all of that, and not be aware of it. More so, it was more challenging for me doing the play than it was doing the film, because doing the film it was a much more controlled environment. On the stage, anything and everything could go wrong. And I remember when we did the play, in the first preview, my entrance was from back center stage, and the other characters were on stage talking about Helen, and Annie Sullivan had arrived, and she says, "Where is Helen?" And the mother says, "Here comes Helen now." And my entrance was from center back, running straight out at a full out run and stopping at the end of the stage. And the first preview, I did that, and the front row stood up to catch me. And I knew I had him.
Ooh, that's
and
great.
It was just the most incredible feeling to have that instant, not gratification, but that instant connection and to, I'd never felt anything like that before. Yeah. That was pretty overwhelming for my 13-year-old self. Yeah. And that I love that feeling. I remember when, after Little House ended and I'd done several movies of the week, I auditioned for a play in New York, my first one, off-Broadway show. And everybody told me not to. And they said, you know, if you really don't, what if it's a new play? What if it bombs? What if you don't get it? What if it's, you know, I mean, it's really going to hurt. And I kept saying, no, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. I've got to try this. I've got to continue to challenge myself. And I auditioned and I got the part, and the show ran for, I don't know, years. Shana Madel ran for, I was in it for 6 months. And it was probably one of the most fulfilling times I've ever had as an actor. And to do it for that long.
What do you use to keep things fresh when you're doing it for that long? You know?
The fear of not being asked to ever do it again.
There you go. That's good motivation. That's good. I mean, did you try to fool yourself? I mean, some people talk about, you know, part of the process of, you know, literally trying to fool themselves into this is happening for the first time. Any tricks? Any?
The play that I was doing was so gut-wrenching and emotionally, I was so keyed into it on so many different levels. I mean, there were certainly performances that were far less exciting than others for me. But the play is about two sisters who are reunited after the two Jewish sisters, one who fled with her father from Poland to New York as an infant, and the other sister who stayed behind with the mother during World War II. And the whole family is killed in concentration camps. She's the only survivor, and it's about the two sisters coming together and getting to know each other again, and haunted by the memories of the mother and all of the issues that come with that. And I really, I didn't have to draw on much to go to that place. My family is Jewish, and we lost a lot of people, particularly on my grandfather's side, during the war in the camps, and I'd heard about it my whole life. So that part of it I understood, the sister part of it I understood, the lost part of it I understood. So for me, it wasn't horribly difficult. And there were moments where, yeah, I definitely was pushing and completely faking stuff on stage, trying to get away with whatever I could. But not many, not with that show.
Did you ever take acting classes? I mean, you know, you were, you know, started at such an early age. You got the chance to learn by doing. So it almost seems like a silly question, but did you ever formally study?
I went to a class. I went to a class when I was a kid for, I think it was about a week. And at the end of the week, there was an exercise that we had to do. And I had been doing Little House for a while, but it was something I just decided that I told my mother I needed to study. I felt like, you know, there were all these actors who studied, and I really needed to get better at what I was doing, and I was missing something by not studying. And at the end of the week we did this exercise that was, for me, it felt like a test. I called it the test. It wasn't really a test. I failed the exercise. And I was the only working actor in the room. And that pretty much did it for me. I kind of decided that, you know, this is actually going to undermine my confidence more than it's going to benefit it. And I think I kind of have a hard time describing to people the process of what I go through as an actor, because it was never articulated to me how to break it down. It's just sort of organic from having done it as a kid. I was asked to teach acting, which was a debacle to high school students. And I went into the class and all I could say was, well, you do it. And here's a scene, and you do it. I lasted 3 weeks, and the kids asked for a new teacher. We're not really learning anything from her. It's a small wonder. So I don't know how to describe it. It just happens.
Well, it's probably best not to mess with success, right?
I
once
guess
you got a
not.
good formula, you stay with it.
I think so. I think so. Maybe eventually. You know, if this streak keeps up, I may consider going back. Either that or a haircut. I don't know.
Yeah,
Something's got to change.
Is there a particular role you would love to have the opportunity to play? I mean, is there something that you've read over the course of your career that you go, God, I'd love to have a shot at that one, or some particular project that you just really love to get your hands on?
They're always. It seems like there's not one that I've focused on really.
Mm-hmm.
There are roles that have come by, like the ones I auditioned for this year. The pilots that I auditioned for were shows that I was exaggerating when I said none of them got picked up. One of them did, and it was one of the best scripts I think I've ever read in my life. And I'm going way out on a limb because if the show itself is bad, you're all going to think I have no taste. But I have a feeling the show is going to be absolutely enormous. And I cried when I read the script. The show now is called American Dreams for NBC. At the time it was called Miss American Pie. And of course, the feedback I got, which may not even have been what the feedback was that I was just, and I don't know what to do with this. You guys have to explain this to me. I was too young. Is that bad or good?
That's kind of
It's
like
good.
that. You're too good looking, and you go, wow, hey, what are you going to do with that?
That happened to the president of New York. Happened to Eileen Henry.
No, I've heard many
She
people
auditioned
that-
for something and she was too pretty.
Yeah.
That's not fair. 'Cause you can't get mad at that. You can't do anything about it.
Stay in the business, though, and the age will show on your face eventually.
Not necessarily.
Well, yeah, there's that whole thing with this.
Depends on your dermatologist now, doesn't it?
Yeah, yes, indeed. That's a whole other living, isn't it?
Yes, it
That's,
is. Yeah. Just ask Victoria Principal. Well, it's your skincare. You know.
Right, of
you
course.
know. If
Yeah.
you've stayed up late, you know.
Yeah.
You know my secret. God, I'm good. See, it's all that commercial training, all those years of doing commercials. It's natural for me to sell things. I'll tell you, back to the dream role, the one role I wish I had played simply for the challenge of doing it, and because there's a continuity to it, and now I'm too old, actually, I would have loved to have played Annie Sullivan. Since Patty Duke had played Helen Keller and then played Annie Sullivan, and then I played Helen Keller, it would have been great to have played Annie Sullivan and to sort of continue that chain. And in fact, at one point, the property came into my line of vision, as it were, and I could have. There was a possibility that it was going to be developed, and I would have loved to have had Patty Duke direct it with me as Annie Sullivan, and then bring in another little girl. But it didn't come to pass. So that would have been something I would have loved to have done. Alas, not in this lifetime.
You have a pretty special relationship with Patty Duke, yes?
I do. Yeah. She is, her picture's in my office upstairs. She is a second mother to me. I've done three movies with Anna. She and I have numerous unspoken connections. We have the former child actor, child star kind of thing together. And all of the inherent, and all child actors that have come, or child star, I hate the word star, well-known child performers, I want to say, have a lot of the same issues. Generationally, it doesn't matter when they were, if they were in the 20s or the 30s or the 80s. We have a lot of the same issues. So she and I had that, and when we're together, we watch out for the pitfalls with one another. I remember once we were working on one film, and as adults, and I was having a really hard time, and I was sort of compromising what I wanted to say and what I wanted to do to make everybody else happy. And she leaned over and she said, "You're being Miss Perfect." And that was the clue that I had to stop. I had to actually state what was really going on with me. And she was one of the first people I called when I was asked to run for president. I called her and I said, "You know me really well. What do you think?" And she said, "Do it. Absolutely do it." It's aside from the fact that she said it was my time, and I agreed, it is my time. It was something that she felt ultimately would benefit my life and my children's lives and have a tremendous impact on many, many people on many, many different levels, and that it was really important for me to take the journey. And I obviously heeded her advice. I may never speak to her again. I exaggerate. I'm actually having a terrific time. I really am. I hate to use the word challenged, but I am challenged daily. And I am learning things about myself and about human nature that I never really knew before. I couldn't have done it before now, right. But I'm here and I'm not going anywhere for a while.
Now, Patty Duke's tenure here as president was not exactly a smooth one either. I mean, she had a lot of...
Is anyone's?
No. Well, some are a little less eventful than others, but
yeah.
Did she kind of give you any warning about that and just say, it could be difficult and could be contentious?
She did say that. She did tell me that it would not be easy, but nothing really worth it in life is, in my opinion. Right. She did call me the second time around when we were going through the whole voting. Oh,
that's right. That happened twice, didn't it? Yeah, you had to get okay.
She did call me and say, "Okay, so I never went through anything quite like this."
Right.
Right. And I don't know what to tell you other than just keep doing whatever you're doing. I pretty much stepped into unprecedented, albeit not by my choice, but unprecedented territory as far as the historical presidents of Screen Actors Guild go. But I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm not twitching. I survived. I'm really fine. A little tired, but it's okay. May have taken a few years off my life, but it's fine. I told you earlier I lost 12 pounds. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I've gained it back, but it's okay.
You're a president that shows up. I mean, I have to tell you, as a staff member, this is somebody who shows up sometimes on a daily basis and tackles these problems time and time again. So, I think it's great that you held your head high through a time that was unprecedented. Clearly, an election committee came out and said, this has to be rerun for whatever reasons. We had to accept that as a decision. But it left you in a very unusual situation where there you are, an incumbent president, and there's still this huge question mark hanging over everything. And, from where I was sitting, it was handled with a lot of grace and dignity.
Thank you.
Not an easy thing to do.
No. It's, I think, thus far, if I had to peg a lesson, I think one of the things I've learned up to this point is that sometimes it's really not necessary to fight back. Yeah. It doesn't benefit anybody or anything in any way. And there have been many times, not just in that situation, but in this very room where I've had to deal with things where my whole body says, "You tell that person to shut up right now because they just said something bad about you." And I have to stop and think, well, now, how does that help anything? At all. So I've found a certain serenity. Either that or I'm in denial. Whatever it is, it's good for now.
Working, so let's not mention. Again, that formula thing, let's hang on to the formula that's working.
I know a gentleman who is an author who actually went through a horrible drug addiction, and at one point, through one of the many rehabs he went through, he's now clean and sober, but through one of the many rehabs he went through, he was told that drugs gave him a false sense of security, and he wrote this in his book, and he wrote, "Any sense of security is fine with me." I think I get that.
Yeah. There's other aspects of your life that you are giving back in other ways. You work with other charities. I think I read somewhere March of Dimes. And
I do. I worked with the March of Dimes and still work with them from a distance because they're one of the groups of individuals, the doctors and nurses at the hospital my son was in, included, that I attribute with saving my son's life because of the research they did into prematurity and why premature babies can't breathe, and because of the solution they came up with 10 years ago, actually more now, that was applied to my son when he was born, and I have him, and he's 6, and he's fine. I felt compelled to work with them. As a child, I felt compelled, it's interesting, to work with organizations that helped other children who came from abusive families, children who were autistic, and in particular, I did a lot of work with children who were chronically and terminally ill, and still do. I felt, and a lot of this has to do with my mother, I felt that being able to make someone, particularly a child, smile through adversity or pain, even just to distract them for 5 minutes, was actually something that is a gift to me. It gave me a sense of gratitude, a sense of, I don't know, it just gave so much back to me. I felt like it was something I had to do, even as a kid, and so it's something I still do. Now I've become an adoption advocate, finally, after all these years, working with various groups to loosen the restrictions on who can adopt and how they can adopt and where you can adopt, and it seems to continue. And now, here I am. I'm the ultimate advocate and activist working to protect this membership, the children who are part of our membership, and to try and all I want to do is the best that I'm capable of. That's the only reason I've done any of this. This meaning SAG, work with Screen Actors Guild. There's really no other reason for it.
Make a difference in other people's lives, be of service.
Make it better, hopefully, right. and to be of service. And I think that it's very easy to lose sight of that, and particularly if you come from a place that I am, that's really advantaged and blessed. I mean, if I sat down and started to write all the things I'm grateful about, I guess I could start with being able to see and take it from there. I'm a lucky woman. My children are healthy. I think they're well adjusted. I'll see later when they're in their later teens. I have a terrific marriage. I'm married to an incredible man who's a working actor. That's why he's not here. He's actually working as we speak in LA. Which I gotta tell you is a relief, since all of this business, even before we started enforcing Global Rule 1, he was passing on non-signatory work in Canada, and every time he'd say no, he'd look at me and go, had to be. So he's happy right now. My life is good, and it is incumbent upon me to give that back. I'm afraid if I don't too, I'm taking advantage of it, and that's not right. Yeah. That's just not the way we're supposed to be. That's just the way I was raised, I guess.
I want to share an interesting piece of trivia that I promised Valerie Yaros, our SAG historian, that I would let you know. The term March of Dimes, do you know where that came from?
No.
It was a phrase that was coined by Eddie Cantor, who was the second president of the Screen Actors Guild. and he was responsible for, I think it was 9 million dimes being sent to the White House to raise money to combat polio, because Franklin Roosevelt felt so strongly about trying to find a cure for the disease. So I just thought that was a really interesting little piece of trivia. Thanks to Valerie Yaros for providing that kind of stuff. But again, it seems that people that are drawn to this type of service here are drawn to being of service in other ways, and it just it's important. I think it's important. I mean, actors give so much of themselves on stage and before the camera. It seems like a natural transition to want to give back in other ways if we can break out of the self, self, that has to be there in order to be successful as well.
It seems more tangible too.
Yeah.
In a way, it seems. I don't know. It's just important. It's just really important. And I guess if I were to give anything to my children too, it would be the knowledge that it's important for them to continue to give back for all of the blessings that they have as well. I mean, that is what makes us human, isn't it? Ultimately.
Well, guess what I've got in my pocket here? Let's see here. I've got some real questions now. We're going to turn to the audience. This is great. Let's move on to some audience questions here. Great. Thank you very much. Where is Leslie McCaskey? Is that right? Here. Hi, Leslie. Hang on for just a second. We're going to bring a microphone.
Alyssa, I just wanted to ask you, what is the funniest anecdote you can remember from when you were working on the set of Little House?
There are a few, but there's one that stands out in my brain. It's something I didn't actually find out about until years later. Apparently, when we were shooting the pilot, we did a scene where Pa came back from hunting and he brought rabbits. And I had to walk in with these rabbits and say, and look, Pa got a bunch of rabbits. And set the rabbits down on a table, and then the scene continued. And they used real dead rabbits. And Michael knew that if I knew, I would be very, very upset. So he told everyone, and then told me, that I had to be very careful because they were hypnotized. And they were actually sleeping in this hypnotic state. So apparently, I came in and I said, and look, Pa got a bunch of rabbits, and I put them on the table and they slipped off and they landed and went thud. And there was a dead silence because everybody thought I was going to figure it out. And I guess I looked down and I looked up and said, wow, they really do sleep tight, don't they? Now, the story itself is funny, but for me, the funniest part is that Michael told me the truth at Leslie's wedding when I was an adult, 12 years ago. He said, there's something I have to tell you. Gotta get this off my chest. And I was kind of shocked, to tell you the truth. But that was pretty much the way things were around those parts.
Did you ask him any other lies he had told you?
I was afraid to ask that. God only knew.
Yeah.
You remember that corpse that we had? I told you it was not real well.
Let's see here. This one does not have a question on it. I'm going to read it out loud, and if somebody wants to take credit for it, that would be fine. Were you ever to the point where you thought you'd give up acting? If yes, what brought this on? Why did you keep at it? And what brought you through? Anybody want to claim it? That's a good question. I'd claim credit for it. There she is, right over there.
There actually was a moment. I was shooting a mini-series. I was shooting Danielle Steele's Zoya. We were in New York, and I was surprisingly in the first trimester of pregnancy with my youngest son, Michael. I found out 2 days before I left to go to shoot this miniseries for almost 3 months in Russia, New York, Montreal, and Paris. Not a good time to find out you're pregnant. I was very happy, quite surprised. And we were shooting a scene where I had to walk in with a baby in my arms. That was my child, and have a conversation with the gentleman that was playing my husband. And they hired a baby, and the baby came, it was not twins, and the baby came and had an ear infection and a fever. And the baby was hysterical every time they took it away from its mother. And they'd hand this baby to me, and the baby would be screaming and arching its back and pushing away. And I tried everything. We tried rocking the baby to sleep and then handing me the baby, and this went on for hours with this child just screaming that horrible, blood-curdling, just hysterical, and it was hot, and it was horrifying to me, and the director wanted me to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And I'd never done this to this point, and I haven't done it since. After I don't know how many takes, and we just couldn't even get through the scene, I finally handed the baby to the baby's mother, and I said, I will not participate in child abuse. I am out of here. And I walked off the set, and I walked into my dressing room, and I slammed the door, and I locked the door, and I called my husband at the hotel, hysterical. I walked off the set, and I can't catch my breath, and they're abusing a child, and they wanted me to be a part of it. And he said, okay, and he came down. Then I called my agents, then I called my managers, and I said, that's it, I quit. And when my husband walked in, I was so overwrought and so disheartened and in so much agony over it. I said to him, if this is the way it's going to be, forget it. I don't want to work in this business, because if this happens in front of me, and these people know that I am sensitive to these issues dealing with child actors, it's happening everywhere. And he said to me, but sweetie, if you quit, you can't stop it.
Yeah.
So here I am. Now look.
Where's Dan Moynihan? Dan? There he is right there. Let's get him a microphone.
Hi, I'm Dan Moynihan.
Hi.
What's the question that I wrote?
I don't know, but the answer is yes.
Dan, your line is... you asked here, what's the best thing to read to find work?
Yeah, that's basically it.
Thanks, Dan.
No, seriously, I did a commercial a year ago, and that got me into SAG. And I want to do more of that stuff. I'm, doing what people tell me to do, and not going too far. So, is there anything I'm not doing? Like, what do you buy? It's not the Hollywood Reporter.
Backstage. Where else would it be?
I don't know.
Do you have an agent?
I have an agent.
Are they getting you out?
Your agent would be getting the breakdowns. So you can always ask your agent, hey, what have you seen in the breakdowns that is appropriate for someone my age, and have you submitted me?
In the breakdowns, that's a
Your agent would get the breakdowns. The breakdowns are a publication of all the jobs that are casting and hiring and shooting.
Thank you very much. I'm having a meeting with my agent tomorrow.
There you go.
Thank you. Let's see here. This is a good question, because Bruce isn't here, so we can talk about him a little bit because he's not here, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Juliet, where are you? Juliet Cesarini, is that right? Cesarini?
My question was just about the difficulty of being a professional working in the industry as part of a couple. I mean, both of you are involved. I'm just trying to visualize the
Two egos, too much for one household, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Actually, I never dated anyone who wasn't an actor. I hear people say it, oh, well, I'll never date an actor. Well, actors are, and I get really insulted by that, by the way, because I am one. But I don't know anybody who would have a better understanding of all the stuff that goes on. I also, when I met Bruce, one of our first dates was to a screening of one of my films. And to that point, I had been with a person who didn't work much, and in those situations was very uncomfortable and very insecure, and I was very concerned about his well-being and who he was talking to and was he all right and is everything okay, and you know, maybe and actually bringing him in as a producer on some of my projects and trying to sort of nurture this career for this person over here, and I actually lost focus of what I was supposed to be doing. It was bad, and it ended in a divorce. When I met Bruce and we went to this screening of mine, I kept looking across the room just to make sure he was okay. And he was talking to people, and he was socializing around the room, and he kept coming over to me saying, "Can I get you anything? Do you need anything?" And I thought, wow, this is nice. And we have, it's very supportive. We're very, I don't think we compete with each other at all. I think we're very understanding. We get envious if the other one is working on something or they're doing something terrific. And I definitely have a problem watching him kiss other women on film. He leaves the room when I'm on film doing that too. He can't, I'm at least kind of quiet about it. I do it in that I don't know, the distinctly Melissa way. I wait until the scene's almost over, or you know, they're moving on to something else, and I'll say, you know, she's got really bad skin, huh? He, on the other hand, in the middle of the scene will go, "Oh God, oh no, I can't, no, I'm not watching this." There she goes again with another guy. It's always with the kissing. I actually did a movie with another Bruce, with Bruce Greenwood, and I'm going to clean the story up just a little bit. I'm going to clean up the language. No, I got to do it. But we'd gotten the tapes of it. Greenwood and I had gotten the tapes of the movie, and there were a lot of love scenes in it. And I watched it with my Bruce, who was just dying the whole time. Going, you didn't have a shirt, did you? And he's just, I mean, he was in agony over it. And then Greenwood and I called each other on the phone to talk about what we thought about the movie. And so Greenwood's on the other end, and Boxleitner's moaning in the background, and Greenwood said, "Did Bruce see it?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "What did he think?" I said, "Hold on." He said, "Greenwood wants to know if you like the movie." And Boxleitner says, "Tell him I loved it, but tell him I said, get off my wife!" So, it's done with love and humor, but it's still not. That's the hard part. That's the really hard part. You know, nobody else, bankers don't go off to work, and hopefully don't go off to work and make out with their coworkers. If they do, it's really bad.
Thank you. Good question. Again, an uncredited question here, but it seems to segue right into what we were just talking about. As actors, how do you balance your career with being a parent and, you know, taking care of the kids?
As anyone, as a woman.
That was yours. Okay. Great.
Oh, thank you. It's not easy. It's not easy for any woman in the workplace, I don't think. It's you know, there are those moments, and I know this is thoroughly politically incorrect, but there are those moments where, you know, although I am extraordinarily grateful for all the freedoms I have because of the women who came before me, because of the women who forged the way, there are times where I think, I just want someone to limit the choices. Just tell me that I can't and that I have to stay home. Just give me that. Because I get, it feels like a no-win situation sometimes. When I'm working, I definitely feel horrible that I'm not home with my kids. And if I don't work for a long enough time, I feel bad that I'm not out there securing their future. And so I just do the very best that I can. and try and limit the time that I'm away from them. Oh, I remember the first time I left my first son to go on location, and I was away from him for 2 weeks, and I came home, and he was, I think, 2 years old, and I went over to him and I said, Dakota, Mommy's home, and he wouldn't look at me, and he wouldn't look at me. I said, Dakota, I'm here. And he looked at me and he said, you're a bad mommy. And it just devastated. Well, obviously it's still here with me, and it just, and yet he's got a great college fund and he has a terrific future ahead of him, and a health plan.
Plenty of money for therapy too, in case that's necessary.
Well, yeah,
So,
as long as it's a therapist, it's covered by the health plan.
There you go. Kathy Copeland. Where's Kathy?
Yeah, I
Hold on for just a second, Kathy. You gotta wait for the microphone.
You pretty much answered it, but I wanted to know if you thought it was still difficult to find good roles for yourself.
I'm starting to get a little nervous, even though I heard that I was too young for something, that it's getting more difficult because I'm getting older, and I know that's coming, and it's a hard thing to fight. And it seems, it's obviously very prevalent for women, but it's also prevalent for men. God bless my husband. He auditioned for 5 pilots, and he didn't get any of them because he was too old. He's 52, and he looks, I hate that. Those men who just get distinguished and we get old. And it's really, to my mind, all it boils down to is money. It's the advertiser dollars and their perception of and their desire to target that buying 18 to 25 audience who don't want to see me. They want to see Cameron Diaz. I understand that. But there has to be a way to promote. We're all aging. This is we're baby boomers. We are the great consumers. I don't understand why that market's not exploited and taken advantage of, and why that's considered a detriment. I also think that they're making a huge mistake because, in my opinion, the older we get, the better we get, because we get deeper.
Thank you. Emil Lynn?
Yeah.
Hey.
Actually, I want to change my question.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. My question is, who is the actress or actor that you look up to the most, that you've worked with or not?
Wow, there's so many. Obviously Michael Landon and Patty Duke are the first two that come to mind. I admire people who are courageous, I think. And it's not necessarily just actors and actresses. I look up to people who stand behind the strength of their conviction and their beliefs. And actually, I as of late, have found a great affinity for people who are not afraid to be unpopular. Interesting, isn't that? I admire people who are willing to take risks, and who are willing to stand up for what they believe in, regardless of what that is. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Mike Farrell, actually. Mike is willing to speak his mind and to put himself in a position for what he believes to be the betterment of the humankind, and to have an absolutely polar opposite political opinion from many, many people, and doesn't waver when faced with that. People like that I admire tremendously. Gotta say, Condoleezza Rice, she's willing to be extremely unpopular. She still does it. I don't agree. There are some things Mike says that I don't agree with, but the fact that it doesn't matter, these people stick by their convictions, I think is an admirable quality, and something I strive to have in my life. I hope that answered that. I think so.
Great. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to ask your other question here because I think it's a good one too. The one that he wrote down here is, are you aware of this practice that people have to pay to be able to see casting directors? Billy D'Amata is taking the lead on trying to, pull the rug out from under that. What do you think about that? And is there something that we can do about it? Yeah, it does suck. How do we get around it?
We make it illegal,
Yeah.
and we enforce it, and we take it up on a legislative level, on a federal level, actually, hopefully. I mean, it's just insane. That's just, given the opportunity, there are so many people who will take advantage, not just in this business, but in general. But in this business, really, there's such room for mischief and manipulation of actors because we want to work, and because so few of us do, and because we'll do anything to do that. This stuff makes me crazy, and they do it with kids, which is just abhorrent. It's like, I don't know, it feels like pimping to me. It's wrong, and hopefully within my time here, it'll stop. I hope so.
Great.
Thanks. We're certainly into it.
Let's see here. Abner Genesee? We kind of danced around this question earlier, but I'd like you to ask it again because I think we might get some out of her here.
Hi, Melissa. You spoke before about some of the challenges you run into on a frenetic set with people doing your hair and your makeup and all those kinds of things, and yet having the challenge to focus on that moment when the time comes to roll. Can you speak to some of the techniques that you use when that time comes?
Yeah. I actually can answer this clearly because there is a process here. I isolate completely. I actually have learned how to say, don't touch me right now. That took me a long time because, when you're a kid actor, you want to please everybody. I did. So for me to say no is a big thing. Leave me alone. I'm concentrating. I'm focusing. And then I have my little Discman. And it used to be a Walkman. Now it's a Discman. Now I burned a CD compilation. It used to be a tape of music that I find particularly moving, that drowns out the sound around me. And Barber's Adagio for Strings, actually, is one of the main ones that, for some reason, just hooks into something in me that can take me out of whatever's going on around me, and I can focus. I have been known to kind of squat down in a corner, and sometimes people can't find me. So I let people know where I am, and then I go, and I make it very clear that there are just going to be times where I'm going to ask to be left alone, and that's really important. I've been known to ask for quiet on the set. Too. When I come in, I will ask the AD to please, before I come in, make sure that everybody's quiet and nobody's throwing a tennis ball in my eye line or making a joke or making some kind of obscene gesture. It's really important that I remain focused right now. And they do, generally. And if things start to get out of control, I don't mind stopping and saying, I'm sorry, but which part of can we be quiet so I can do my job now? Did you not get? You did your job and you did your job. Please, can I have this moment? I don't like to have to do that though, because then I have to go back in my corner to refocus because I start to get kind of mad. But overall, I find that this process is a collaborative process, and the crew's there to work with the actors, and the actors are there to work with the crew. And if you ask for what you need, generally that will be respected if it's within reason.
Do you think that applies too to somebody who doesn't have more celebrity status who's on the set? You know, if you're just a day player on the set, but you're still running into a difficulty there? It's important to speak up for yourself, or should you just kind of sit there and suck it up and do the best you can?
Oh, no. It is absolutely essential that you speak up for yourself. And hopefully you're working with an actor who is a lead on that show or who is in a position to back you up. Mm-hmm. And they should. I mean, that's what we do. And I know, and I think the majority of actors that I've worked with a few who don't get this, but I'm only as good as the people that I'm working with. And if you need something, and I'm in a position to deliver that to enhance your performance and enhance my performance, I'm going to do everything I can to back you up. It's a symbiotic relationship. I mean, that's really ultimately, isn't that what SAG is all about? It's about the bigger, higher profile actors standing up to support the rank and file that are coming up. And likewise, with the number, that's what we're all here to do. And it works that way in the microcosm of the set.
Speak up for yourself. Yeah. That's a good thing. Where's Carmen Mercado? Carmen?
I've been an actress for the last 10 to 15 years, and I haven't worked that much, and I haven't auditioned that much, which is the worst part. And I'm Hispanic, and I don't see that many people working, you know, in terms of colleagues of mine, Spanish women, especially 30 to 35 to 40. Mm-hmm. And is that going to change? And not only just Hispanics, but also blacks and minorities per se.
I think that, well, first of all, pretty much more than any other question, this is a question I get asked a lot. And I think that as time goes on, this is more in the consciousness of people, but it is our responsibility to continue to not force, but point the powers that be in the directions of non-traditional casting. It is absolutely essential that we continue to nurture that and continue. I think, you know, we learn best from positive reinforcement. If we had an annual report card or an award ceremony or something to hold up as an example, the networks and the studios who do this well, I think that will start to turn the tide. It's not going to happen overnight. I'm certainly not going to fix it. The leadership that is sitting here at Screen Actors Guild is not going to fix it all right away. It's going to be a gradual process. But the louder we are and the stronger we are and the more united we are, and united is a key word here, the more we're going to be able to achieve in that area. I have to say also that one of the least recognized groups within our membership is the performers with disabilities. And having played Helen Keller, I'm sure that there is an actress now who is a child who is either has a hearing loss or is unable to see, who could play that role better than I ever did. I think we need to start thinking about casting people with different abilities in different roles as well. We're in a position to make a difference, but we're not in a position to dictate the way these people do their business. But we're certainly in a position to support the ones who do, and to chastise the ones who don't. And you know, we're in a position to pressure advertisers if necessary. I mean, as a populace, we certainly are. Writing campaigns are important. Just as citizens, I think we have to do that. It is. It's an interesting issue. I remember when I was a teenager. I was 17, 18 years old, and Jane Fonda decided that it was time to activate the younger actors who were to bring out the activist in us, the younger actors that were coming up into positions of power and influence in the business at that time. Actually, I was closer to 19, and she had a gathering of a lot of us, myself and Tom Cruise and all of these actors who were working and very visible at the time. And I remember her saying, you know, it was our responsibility to insist that when we are cast, that there is a certain quota of actors of color that are cast around us. And I thought that was a really great concept, but I certainly wasn't in a position to, you know, I said to her, well then, I mean, am I supposed to say to a studio head or a network executive that I'm not going to take the job unless you do this? They're not going to hire me. I mean, I did that with my first husband sometimes, and I didn't get the job. But I think it is up to the...
There's a problem in the factory. With any specific thing about hiring or just not hiring certain people or just firing certain people within the factory, the union will back them up. It's the same thing in this situation. The union should really be fair in terms of each particular movie. There should be fairness about who's working and who's not working, and there should be an equal opportunity employment. That's part of the union position,
I think we can certainly oversee it.
I'm paying a lot of money in unions.
I think we can certainly oversee it. I certainly think that we can have a loud voice. I certainly think that we can activate, I don't know why I keep using that word, we can motivate people to do this. But as Todd said before, we're not a hiring hall, so it's hard for us to dictate how the business functions. But we can certainly create incentives for them to do this. And I think, to put us in a position where everybody's going to be striving to get this award or report card or whatever it is at this huge ceremony. I don't know, even, at the SAG Awards or a ceremony like that where we bestow a very public award on the network that does the best job of displaying the diversity of the American landscape in their casting of all of their shows. And you get someone really, really high profile to show up to this and present this award, people are going to want it. And that's going to make a difference. So yes, we do have to do that to a certain extent. But it's going to take time. Everything takes time. And I know it's really frustrating. And I know it's really difficult. There are roughly 100,000 of us. And basically 10 of us work. So...
The other thing that occurs to me, you said this earlier, that that films and television are really about the money, and you mentioned it here again that you can make a statement by writing to advertisers to support programming that does encourage diversity. Certainly, the more that people of color get the opportunities to produce and direct, to write projects. I mean, isn't that going to be part of that bigger change? That it's really going to take a sea change, not only in whatever it is that the union can do to try to move forward that agenda, but also the industry itself has to find that there's a way to profit from this. I'm going to digress here for just a second because I think it's an important illustration of it. About 4 years ago, IKEA set the world on its ear by doing advertising that appealed to the gay community. Now, nobody would go near that. Advertisers are probably the most homophobic group of people that you'll ever want to come across. But they saw that there was a buck to be made there, and they went, well, so much for that phobia, let's get down to business. And I think that the more you can create the model where this is going to work and it's going to be profitable, that's what's going to move things ahead. That's what will ultimately change these things. Okay. Where's Jacqueline Renee?
Hi, I was just wondering, what is the most rewarding thing about acting for you?
Okay, time's up. Sorry.
It took a while, but the first thing that I wouldn't say popped into my head, because that was rather a slow process. But the first thing that came into my mind, interestingly enough, was bringing attention to my father's name, to the Gilbert name. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
My father was a brilliant entertainer. Brilliant, and not just because he was my father, but because he really and truly was phenomenally talented. He danced, he sang. He started out as a child as an acrobat in the circus. And his mother was a French aerialist, and his father was an Irish vaudevillian. And they sent him when he was a little boy to live with a family of aerialists in Buenos Aires, where he trained and learned and traveled with the circus until he fell from the trapeze. And then he became an actor, and a singer and a musician and blah, blah, blah. And there's sort of the motivating factor in why I do what I do is to carry on that name and to give it the attention and the credibility and the respect that he deserved and worked so hard to have and didn't get to have, really, and should have had. Interesting, that.
That's really beautiful, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Melanie Herman. Melanie? There she is there.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for coming. Oh, is it on?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thanks
I was
thanks
here.
for sharing your experience with us tonight.
Thank you.
There's a really big craze right now with the whole reality television stuff, and just wanted to know your thoughts. Is it going to be here to stay? And do you think it hurts the real actor? So my question.
Absolutely, it is detrimental. I think that, and I made this prediction on September 13th. I spoke to my manager, and I said to him, well, this is the end of reality television.
For a while.
And he said, why do you think that? And I said, we've seen people die. We've seen people struggle to help each other live. We've seen humanity at its best and at its worst. I don't know if the American public wants to see people eating bugs in the wilderness anymore, because the ultimate reality television has happened right in front of our eyes. And the ratings of the reality programs have dropped. Survivor, each new incarnation of it is going down. I think it's a fad. I think it's a phase that we're going through. And I think, you know, the networks had to find something to put in place of all of the television stuff, you know, when we were going through the negotiation and all of that sort of stockpiling of work, and then the lack of work, and trying to figure out where we were going, and all of that, and that fear that we weren't going to be making any television. They plugged in all this reality programming. When we went on strike in the 80s, that was when a lot of the news programs started, the 48 Hours and those sort of programs became replacements, and the audiences became comfortable with that, and there was no point taking them off the air. This I got from Les Moonves's very mouth to me, and I remember him saying to me, you know, we got a lot of reality programming lined up. Should, you know, your union decide to go on strike again when you go into negotiations? Of course, that had no bearing on me. I don't really care what Les Moonves says. And you can tell him that. Especially since he dropped a night of movies of the week from his programming schedule. I just don't think, you know, people are as enchanted as they were with a lot of it. Although I am a little bit concerned about this celebrity boxing thing. It's gotten me a little worried.
Who do you want to box?
Who or where?
Who? Yeah, said who.
I've had my big celebrity smackdown for my lifetime. participate. It was all the media. They did it. We didn't have to do a thing. We just had to sit back and let everybody fight for us, and that's, it was just that, it's enough. And I don't know, this thing makes me really nervous because, again, I think it's using that desire that we have to work and to be seen and then for these actors, a lot of them who were well known and did work and did have this recognition and attention, a lot of these people will do anything to get it back, including allowing someone else punch them in the head. That's just, I'm sorry, that's just wrong. It's wrong. And I really, maybe wishful thinking on my part, but I think it's going away.
Thanks.
I have to follow up with a question on that because I just saw a promo last night for Dick Wolf's new series. That's the creator of Law and Order and all the franchises that go with that. Their new installment of this is real life Law and Order. So they follow a case through the legal system. And when I watch that, not only does it get me on the level of this is wrong because, I like to advocate for actors, but it worries me too about sort of that blurring line between reality and fantasy. And
well, look, there's one thing I need to make abundantly clear also. There is no such thing as reality television when the people participating know there's a camera there. Mm-hmm. Their behavior changes instantly. Right. So, aside from spy TV, which is illegal, there is no real reality programming, even
except
in
for the Osbournes,
Well, clearly Ozzy doesn't know what's going on. I just watched an interview with them on Greta Van Susteren just did an interview with them, and I was watching Ozzy, and I was trying to figure out what it was about him that seems so familiar to me. And I turned to my husband and I said, my God, this is my grandfather with long hair. Now, mind you, my grandfather this is when he was towards the end of his life, he was in his 80s, and that's the way Ozzy moves like my grandfather, talks like my grandfather when he was dying. But I digress. Yes, it does say something about Ozzy, doesn't it? Ozzy is not much older than the man I'm married to. Ozzy's 58. Bruce is 52.
Bruce looks a lot better than Ozzy. I have to tell you. He does. Where's Marty? Marty, I don't have a last name here. Marty, there she is.
Thank you. Hi. With programs like Eliminate and Blind Date and all those kind of opening up huge avenues of sexuality in that, women, where do we stand as far as not, having sexual harassment and all that pushed on us?
Well,
there's a huge amount of graphic sexuality showed in these shows, and especially with programming like HBO, Cinemax, and all this other stuff, it really opens up avenues for sexual harassment. I know that the union backs up sexual harassment very greatly, especially for those that, go ahead and, take the strength to report it. But, there's a huge amount of actresses out there that don't.
There's a part of me that says a woman is in charge of her own destiny and should be allowed to do go wherever she wants, in whatever way she wants, without having to be afraid of being assaulted. It's really complex. I think that sexual harassment is a serious issue and one that should be dealt with and one that we have to be very wary of. And I actually have a friend who's an actress right now who's in a very sticky position who recently cornered me and said, listen, I'm having a problem with the producer that I work with, and I don't know what to do, and I don't, and I'm just now finding my way through this with her, and this is on a show that is so non-sexual. It's, might as well be Little House on the Prairie. Sexuality is a part of human nature. and there are shows that portray it, and I mean, we're talking about content now, and I don't believe in the regulation of content. I believe in the regulation of what our children are exposed to, and I just said this recently. Actually, I said this, I just came back from Chicago. I was doing Oprah's show, and I was talking to the audience after, and I said, I spend most of my day regulating what my children intake. I have less of a problem with sexuality than I do with violence, and particularly violence against women, and I'm the mother of 4 boys, so that's a big thing with me. There's another part of me that says, well, there are people who are willing to be on these shows and do this, and allow themselves to be put in these situations. It still doesn't mean that they should be open to harassment or abuse of any kind. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely a violation of an individual's civil rights. So, it's a sticky situation. It's difficult to regulate, and it's difficult to oversee, but it's certainly something that I take very seriously, and will pretty much drop everything if someone comes to me and tells me there has been an assault or a harassment of any kind. And that goes both ways, by the way. Mm-hmm. I have had situations where I've seen women harassing men. It's hard, though, I mean, I found that there's a lot of double entendre and innuendo on sets. Mm-hmm. It's just part of the way it is. And it's hard to see where it goes too far. I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever been on the Will and Grace set. Oh my God, those 4. Their pants are dropping and they're grabbing parts, and they do it on the show too, and it's all lighthearted and it's all kind of good, clean fun, but we have to be very cautious of where we cross that line and where we allow it to be crossed. It is scary. It is very scary. I've had situations where I've had actors I've worked with and directors I've worked with. If I didn't allow that kind of flirtation because it made me uncomfortable, they shut down and don't want to deal with me. Exactly. If they don't think they can get away with it, if they don't at least think that at some point in their lives maybe they're going to be able to sleep with me, they just don't want to talk with me at all, talk to me or deal with me. It's bad. But I think it's up to us individually to stand up for ourselves and what let people get away with and what we'll tolerate. And then ask for help if you need it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Just some parting thoughts here. Again, part of where this program evolved from was the idea of giving people some tips and experience and thoughts. Parting thoughts here. What do people need to focus on? What is it that can help carry them through or break them to the next level, from your opinion?
Courage, persistence. I think it's very important to have a life beyond what we do. It's important no matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you are a widget maker or a CEO or an actor, because ultimately that's the legacy that we leave behind, is the life that we led. When all is said and done, in the history of history, nobody's gonna really care about all that tape of me running down hills and crying over this and, driving a car and whatever ridiculous things I've done on film and good things I've done on film. What's gonna matter is where those generations of people whose lives I've been involved with, whose lives I've touched, the people I've raised, their children and their children and their children, what they make of the world and who they are and what I've left behind on a grander scale. I think it puts it all in perspective if you have a life that reaches beyond being an actor, and I think it makes you a better actor. none of it would mean anything if I didn't have my family. It really wouldn't. I wouldn't have the comfort when things are bad. And I wouldn't have anyone to share the good stuff with. And that's really what matters to me, and it always has. And my mom and dad taught me that. My dad had a stroke before he passed away. He had a stroke and he couldn't work anymore. And I was working on the series at the time. And when I needed my braces, he insisted on going through physical rehab to be able to sit on a stool and do his act sitting down, because he felt that it was wrong for me to pay for my own braces, because that was his responsibility as a father. And because I was his family and it was up to him to take care of me, to see to my future and make sure that everything for me was right. And it was never qualified. He never sat me down and said, I'm doing this because. It just was. Because his life and his family were more important than anything. So I guess I'm obviously motivated a lot by my father and everything that I do. And that was a big lesson for me. And it just makes everything better if you have a complete life beyond all of this.
You are a talent and a terrific person, and I think we're lucky to have you as involved with the Screen Actors Guild as you are, and we wish you all the best in the future, and I hope you'll come back and bring your husband the next time. Not to wish him not to be working, but we'd love to have him here too.
There will be a time when he's not working, I'm
there
sure.
Always is,
Yeah, there is.
So thank you again. Thank you for all of us.